getting in return, then you start feeling like you are giving to the needy. But after a while, you start realizing that actually we are all needy in different ways. Some people may have material needs, we may have emotional needs, someone else may have spiritual needs, someone, it's like there's 1,000 different needs, and we can all help each other with our gift. So giving is never a one-way street. Giving is always a two-way street, that we are receiving as we give. So it's really powerful to look at generosity in that way. But yeah, it's fantastic to start and get creative and then build relationships, as you go. Anyone else have a reflection or story? You can put it in your chat or click on your reactions button and raise hand. I think at least that's how it is on my screen.
Anybody else? So Nipun, can you tell us a little bit about how you traveled around, in India without any money?
Yeah. That's yeah, we did. My wife and I, we were just married for 6 months, and we decided to sell everything we have, and we went to the Gandhi ashram, and we said, how far can you go with the kindness of strangers? Right? Will people actually take care of you? We didn't know, but we tried it. We went to the Gandhi ashram, and we said, we're going to walk south. We're going to eat whatever food is offered and sleep wherever place is offered. And it was spectacular. It was amazing, actually, to see, how people would borrow food to feed us. People who had nothing would look at us and say, Atiti Devo Bhava, means you have come to our doorsteps, which means that guest is God. And people would give to us. And all too often, we tend to think, who are your heroes? Like, that's a nice question to ask yourself. I would love to learn about who some of your heroes are. If you were in a classroom, I would ask you all these questions. But, who are your heroes? And most of them are people we read about in the papers or in the books or something like that. But I saw repeatedly, time and time again, on the streets, across Gujarat and Maharashtra, we walked for 1,000 kilometers this way, completely dependent on the kindness of strangers. I saw that those who had the least gave the most. That if I wanted to be happy, I needed to be a giver. And people who ended up having a lot were not the ones who kept a lot. They were ones who actually circulated a whole lot more. And so I decided, I changed my perception of how I want to grow up. That I don't want to be somebody who keeps a lot. I want to be somebody who gives a lot. And that changed me. And so many days, we would experience so many things on the walking pilgrimage every day. But those small acts, as soon as you do a small act of kindness for somebody, not all the time, like the earlier question, some people are not going to reply back to kindness with kindness. But that's because they have been hurt in the past by other people. So they're paying forward the hurt. So you just have to have a bigger heart and say, that's okay. I will still rebound your negativity with compassion. But by and large, on the pilgrimage, we noticed that if we were in that space in us of kindness and compassion and service, people responded with gratitude and generosity. And even when they didn't, if we had practiced enough, we had a spaciousness in our hearts, and that was able to hold even the negative responses in many instances. So yeah, it's wonderful. And Adarsh, how awesome that Buddha and Mahavir are your heroes. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any other heroes who are still alive, Adarsh?
Noam Chomsky.
Oh, Noam Chomsky. Wow. Are you a student?
Not so. I am a lifelong student. So you are always a
Ah,
student, right?
yeah, that's great. I was like, which teenagers are reading Noam Chomsky? I was like, wow, that's impressive. But yes, that's great. Um, go ahead, Shefali, you have your hand up.
Yeah, yeah, Nipun, I've seen your videos earlier. You were there on YouTube. And I would often have a lot of questions. For example, how the regular things, the way we all are reading, is how the regular things are connected or disconnected to general. For example, how is competition, which is like a very regular thing in the normal world, how is competition connected or disconnected to
Yeah.
generosity?
No. Oh, that's a good question. That's an adult question, and I will give you an adult answer. um, you know, there's a beautiful book by James Carse. He wrote this book, I think, 30, 40 years ago. And the title of the book was Finite and Infinite Games. And on the book itself, the punchline was summarized. He says, finite games are played for the purpose of winning. An infinite game is played for the purpose of continuing the play. So we are mostly playing finite games, and all our systems are rooted in finite games. So if you are rich, then other people are not. If you are number one, then other people are not. If you are on the cover of a magazine, other people are not, right? So we have created a world in which we celebrate finite games. And this is where you have a lot of competition. But I used to play a lot of tennis, and when you win a close match, you feel like, yeah, man, I won. And then if you lose a close match, you're like, oh, this is how the other guy must have felt that time I thought I played really good. So there's a joy in winning, sure. But at some point you realize that, is there a way to win where I don't make other people feel bad? Like, because can I win not at the cost of other people's loss? And you say, well, I don't know. You can't play a tennis game in that way. Only one person wins, right? You can't be in a class and everybody getting 100, everybody getting an A grade, right? Everything's on a curve. But you say, okay, well, is that the only kind of game in town? Are there more infinite games? Maybe not the most infinite game. Maybe that's too big. Maybe that's, as others would say, for Buddha and Mahavir to play. But can we move from finite games to slightly larger, more infinite games? And I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves. How do we start to tune into something a little bit bigger than just our own? And how do you start to then, that's the start, right? And then you can say, well, if everybody else is playing a finite game, how can I go in and play a finite game while holding an infinite heart? So you may win, you may lose. And you see this in, like, for example, in sports, you see extreme sportsmanship. You saw this at the Olympics. There's so many videos. You can just Google it. I can tell you so many stories. There was on a football field, soccer field, I think it was Finland and I forget which two countries, but one of the players had a heart attack and he collapsed on the field. And 60,000 fans, all from all sides, like, these fans are usually playing very finite games. They all started chanting together, Ericsson, Ericsson, Eric, like, as if to say, we are with you, don't go on us, and he had just collapsed on the field and took him out, and he actually recovered, which was great. But in that moment, you saw that even in a finite game, people responded by tapping into a more infinite self. And so that's a call to your creativity, that if you're in a very competitive environment where everyone is playing zero-sum games, you can come in and say, oh, how can I creatively bring a little bit of the infinite game here? Rachel, last question. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Vidya.
No, I was just gonna, this is the last question, you can go ahead with that question.
Okay, great. Yeah, just because I also have to race out to another event.
Sure.
But yeah, Rachel, go ahead. Any comments or maybe a story you want to share?
Yeah, thank you, Nipun. Yeah, there are stories to share, but I'm always interested in hearing and learning from other stories. So it's nice that the participants were able to share. But my questions for you is, could you talk a little bit about the learning that happens in school or your learning in university? And how is that learning the same or different from the learning of generosity and kindness? And do those learnings go hand in hand and help each other?
That's a really fantastic question. I was just talking about it with a gentleman earlier today, with a whole group actually, about it. And what we were saying was, what I was reflecting on was, what does it take to educate the heart? And that's a question that we all would nod our heads and say, that's a good question. We should do that as educators, as parents, as, people in society, even as kids. Like, I want to grow my heart, right? You can tell like 10 stories and ask, oh, how many people want to take a weekly class on growing your heart? I would imagine at least, 30-40% of the kids would say, yeah, I want to grow my heart. But the challenge is that to teach the material of the head and the hands, we use a very factory-like process. We use a manufacturing process. So you start here, you have nothing in your head, we dump in all this content, and by the end of the conveyor belt, you have a lot more content, right? Or you have a lot more hand skills, whatever whichever subject or skill you're trying to pursue. And that's a very manufacturing process. The reason, so that will not work in matters of the heart. For matters of the heart, you need to move from a manufacturing process to a gardening process. A gardening process is where you plant seeds, you do your part, right? You do your little bit, but then you have to, you need the grace of the sun, and you need the wind, and you need the bees, and you need all kinds of different factors, and all the conditions have to ripen. So you need to have a farm, you need to have an ecosystem, so that you can, continue growing in your heart. So I think it's a fundamentally different process than we use currently for the head and the hands. And that's why I think most schools are ill-equipped. You can go to principals, teachers, parents, everybody wants to grow their heart, but how do you do it? Because we have factories, we don't have gardens. And so you can say, okay, I'm stuck in a factory. What do I do? Well, maybe you have a terrace garden, and that's a start. Now, that's not going to be like a massive permaculture field, but that's a start. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think ultimately at some point we need, just as you have physical gyms, we need kindness gyms. And just as you have manufacturing plants for the head and the hands material, you need to have gardens for love, gardens to grow our hearts. And I think it's a call to our creativity to see how we do that as a culture, as a global culture around the world. I don't think we have enough of it.
Nipun, Uchiha says her father is her hero. Can she share her story?
Yes, please. Uchiha, go ahead. To unmute yourself, you can go to the bottom left of your screen. Are you still here, Uchiha?
Yeah, he's here.
Okay.
Uchiha, go ahead and share why your father's your hero, if you want to.
Because he does everything for me.
Because he does everything. Wow.
It's beautiful. You know what you should do, Uchiha? Just a suggestion or a thought. I'm assuming your father's not on this call. You should leave a little note for your father and slip it under his pillow tonight. And so when he wakes up, or even right before he goes to sleep, you'll be like, whoa, what's this? What do I see? I see a note. And it says, thank you for being an amazing father and for doing so many things for me.
And also for being my hero.
For being my hero. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it comes down to the little things in life, right? It's beautiful. I'm so glad. Thank you for, doing all the things that you are doing with Generosity Week and so much more. And thank you, Rachel, for connecting us. And And Vidya, over back to you. Thank you for inviting me and including me in our little garden of love here that we perhaps are tilling the soil of.
Thank you, Nipun. You've shared so many stories. And, we are going to have our generosity week. We've planned for one grade. We've planned for the 9th grade already, and they're very excited about it. So we're going to plan for all the grades. And one of the things that you said, appreciate your all the staff in your school that you usually don't notice is an idea that came up with us too. So we will follow that, except that, what struck me is you said, Uchiha, you can't speak. Are you, that's okay. Do you want to? Okay, that's okay, Uchiha. So, what struck me is you said kindness is not a project. So we shouldn't restrict it for a week. We should do it the year round. That was my takeaway from this. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you. And one thing you may all want to try is also do a 21-day kindness challenge, where you do a unique act every single day for 21 days and you share stories with each other. That can be very powerful because you do it together, So if I get weak in my practice, I'm inspired by you. When you get weak, you're inspired by me, and like that with the whole class. So it's a beautiful practice. It's a beautiful thing to practice kindness together. We actually connect with each other in a much deeper way when we do that. So I hope you keep doing that. I hope that I get to hear your stories next time, or maybe even through email. So thank you all very, very much.
Nipun, Shyam wants to say something. One last thing.
No, I just said I can share the kindness challenge books from Service Space. We have these 21-day challenge books. So I'll share it with whoever wants during the event tonight.
Yeah, sure, Shyam. Thank you so much. And we will follow it up. Thank you so much. Great. And thank you so much, Nipun. And thanks everybody for sharing your stories. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you all.
Bye.
Bye. Wait for him to leave.